Yay. There we go. We should be good. Hi, everybody. Ooh, that's a glare on my glasses tonight. Let's go a little bit higher. Welcome. How are you all? Just gonna see if I can fix this. Don't know why I've got the extra glare tonight. Oh, maybe the lamp over here. So welcome. Ooh, that's way too dark. Okay, we'll leave that on. I may have had an extra lamp on tonight. I will take off my glasses if necessary. So, hi. How are you? Welcome. My name is Sadhana, for those of you that are new, if this is your first live, and whether you're chiming in now or a little bit later, it's great to have you here. Hi, Sacred Turtle. Welcome. That was a little bit too high. Okay. Yay. There we go. So tonight we're going to talk about pip cards. We're going to talk about the challenges of reading pip cards. And for some people, it's not a challenge. But it has been a bit of a journey for me, and I would love to share with you my experience. And I have all the decks that I included in the, hi everybody, in the video that I did on non-scenic pip cards. And some of those were, it's a very loose category, but I have all of those decks with me here tonight. I was thinking I might even do some 3-card readings tonight, so that may or may not happen. Don't get too excited quite yet. So we're going to go through all of that, but I do have a few announcements first that I would like to share with you. And I just want to say hi to Bonita. Hello. I don't think I've seen you on the chat before, and if I have missed you, welcome back. And Kyle and Whale Song, hi. Essence 818. Good evening to you. Yeah, juggling work. I'm not sure where you are, Essence, but sometimes we have to do what we have to do. So yeah. So we have quite a few different decks tonight. Marseille-Style decks that have a lot of pip cards, and I have not pulled out particular cards to share with you tonight, which I probably should have done, because you know how you're always looking for certain cards and it takes a while to grab the ones you want. But just let me get a couple of decks on the go here. So let me know what decks you would like to work with. If you want to work with straight up Marseille, if you want to see particular examples, you know, like there's lots of decks like the White Sage and certain aspects of the Lily White, which I share all the time. Even, you know, this one, Lauren Aletta's deck, some of those cards are very pippish. Same with the Wild Unknown. So we don't have to just talk about Marseille-Style decks. So we'll get to all of that in a bit. But first of all, announcements. You may have seen on my community tab that on the 15th, so Saturday after Valentine's Day, I am participating in part 2 of the New Beginning. So New Beginning is a collaborative YouTube effort that was created by Wasima. And Wasima's YouTube channel is called Ascension Waves. She's a lovely soul. She's in Spain or Portugal, one of those two countries. And so she has created this around Valentine's Day, around the energy of love. And so each of the presenters, it's not a 24-hour thing this time, it's about 6 hours. And I have the times here for you. So it starts at 3 p.m. UK time. And I'm on at 7 p.m. UK time, which is 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is where I am. So I will be on Saturday morning here, and I will have that all linked. It's in the description box for this video. It's on my community tab. And I will be doing live readings for at least 3 people after I share with you my heart-centered chakra spreads that I want to talk about. And I want to talk about love. I want to talk about balancing the energy of the heart chakra and how we can kind of pick up on that through tarot cards and a tarot reading. So that's going to be my topic on Saturday the 15th. And the other announcement I kind of wanted to talk about was I have hinted at, started to talk about the chakra course that I'm putting together. I have never taught a chakra course online. I've always done it in person. with students, with yoga students usually, and I've never included a crystal/tarot component. So I want to tell you a little bit about this and how it's going to work, because it's really exciting. And then of course, once it's very close to being up and posted, so you will be able to enroll very, very soon. It's going to begin in April 18th specifically, and it's going to be on Saturdays for about 6 hours. So it's going to be a really intensive big course. 6 hours. We'll have breaks during the day. It will be live. We'll probably be doing it on Zoom. And if you register for the course and you can't make one of the Saturdays, you will be able to, it will be recorded and you'll be able to watch it afterwards. This will be going on for 6 months. So 1 month per chakra. We won't be doing the crown chakra. And there will be a follow-up YouTube live or maybe a Zoom 2 weeks after each session where you'll be able to tune in, ask me questions. I'm going to check in and see how your practices are going, because you're going to have homework for each one. And yeah, so what I have done is broken the course into 4 parts. And so if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you might want to know what this is. So we're going to actually do practices for stimulating and activating the chakras. And then we're going to spend part of the time looking at and try to understand what each of the chakras are about. So looking at what they look like in balance, what they look like out of balance, and what kind of exercises need to happen to bring them into balance, as well as the exercises that I will have given you in the morning. And then we're going to do a component on tarot spreads and tarot, and how to use the tarot to read the chakras, and why I think it's a really effective method. I'm going to throw in a little bit of crystal workshopping, crystal teaching as well too, and how to support the energy of the chakras through crystals. So that's the 3rd section. And then we're going to finish each practice with a yoga nidra, which is a guided meditation, which is specific for that chakra. And then once the class is finished, I'm going to record that separately. So you will have a separate recording of each of the yoga nidras. And my intention is that you practice those at least 3 times a week before the next session. And that will really help with you activating and working on the energy of the chakra of the month. So yeah, so it's really kind of exciting. And like I said, never done this on an online course, but I think it will work well. And I'm really looking forward to it. So it's going to start in April. It'll be about every 4 to 5 weeks for 6 months. So the last date is April 26th. And yeah, if you can't be there live, you'll be able to watch it after the fact. And so cost for the course is going to be 500 Canadian dollars. And if you, for the 6 months, including the follow-up sessions and everything and the material that you'll receive, and if you want to pay per session, there will be an option for that as well too. It'll be a little bit more expensive, but you won't be able to hop in and just do the heart chakra or just do the throat chakra, because I really teach in a cumulative way. So the practices will accumulate over time, and you'll be able to, so you can do you can pay and do like the first one, the second one, the third one, and then drop out, but you can't hop in part way. So I'm going to actually make a separate video about all of this. And so it'll be on my channel really soon, but I just wanted to let you know. And then the third thing is, of course, requests for this live on Thursday nights. So if you do have requests, let me know, because I think we have completed the list that I started a few times ago, which is awesome. So tonight we're on to Pip Cards, and just need a scrap piece of paper, especially if we're going to do readings later. I have so many journals that have various purposes, and one of them is this one here that I always like to have one that has tarot pages, just so I have note paper ready and available. So Pip Cards, yay. Decks that are challenging you. Do you have any questions you want to start with? Because I kind of have a plan, but if you have something that you want to kind of bring up, let me know. All right. In my collection, I have 0 straight up Marseille decks. One of the decks, I'm going to use the marshmallow for a demo tonight. It's a little small though. And I also have Tarot des Zoar right here. And every other deck that I had in that video that I did. So there's 5 components for each of the pips that I think is really important to embody as a reader. And I think actually the Marseille or a Pip style deck is a lot easier to read than when we have so much going on in the scenery. Saying that, however, I think if you have the skill to kind of not entirely blur your vision, but to not be dependent on either the creator's intention or a traditional RWS intention or from another system, but to allow whatever needs to arrive in association with the other cards, then scenic cards can be really helpful, but sometimes it's just way too overwhelming. And so what you get in a more Pip style deck is the opportunity to work on a very, very different level. And so one of the things that is kind of cool is, I think we need to go to Lauren Aletta's deck and maybe the Wild Unknown. So if you want to pull out some cards, I don't know if any of you prepared any cards for tonight. The first thing I want to talk about is the sacred geometry. Oh, there's one right on the top here. This is the 2 of Wands from the Lumina. Now, a lot of decks that have Pip cards include sacred geometry. And I think this goes back historically. And if we look at something like the marshmallow, or, well, right, if we look at a card like this, one of the things that can happen when we stare into the card is that there is an energy in the sacred geometry. If you've ever been to a temple on your travels, perhaps in India or another country, a lot of these, or even a standing stone circle, or there's certain cathedrals that are built and based on sacred geometry. And there's something about being in the energy of a place like that that has a different frequency. You feel the cool spots a lot more. You feel the hot spots. When you move through it, there's just this magical stuff that goes on. And when you have cards where the sacred geometry kind of leaps off the card, I really think this is an opportunity. I mean, this 8 of Pentacles is amazing. Look at this one. This is an opportunity for you to become super receptive and to allow that sacred geometry to kind of penetrate your energy. And what can happen is, have you ever done Tratak? Tratak is the practice where you sit and you gaze at a candle. You can also do it gazing at a mandala, sometimes called a yantra. So if you study yoga and you know some of the yantras. And what happens is so let me explain what this practice is. So if you haven't done it before, so you sit and you light a candle and you have the candle up high enough so the candle flame is right at eye level, about like 2 feet away from you. And the idea is the wick needs to be straight and the flame needs to be quite still. And you stare at the candle and you be still. First, you have to get yourself into a stillness, and you stare at the candle until your eyes begin to kind of feel fatigue and water. And then you close your eyes, and then you take the image of the candle on the interior gaze, and you try to hold it still, and you try to keep the stillness of the candle within your gaze. And so this is a practice for purifying the third eye chakra. It's one of the things we're going to do in the course, is the practice of Trutak. So this practice can also be done with sacred geometry. And what happens is, so you can take a picture of a mandala, you can just stick the piece of paper on the wall, and you sit in front of it, again, about right at eye level, and you want to have the bindu, or the center of the sacred geometry. Now, all of these sacred shapes have a center. So in this particular one, it would be the very center of the five-pointed star in the center. And so that's what you would put at eye level, and you would just kind of soften your focus and stare at it. I'm staring at a white light right now. It's really kind of cool. And what happens is it can take on 3 dimensions. It can start to move. It can take on colors. It might start to kind of wobble. And these all kinds of really cool things can happen. It's an amazing practice. And then the same thing, then you close your eyes and you do your best to keep the shape of the center inside your internal gaze. And it's an amazing practice. And so the reason I'm mentioning this with Pip Cards is that this sacred geometry is obviously in some, and supposedly underlying in others, built into the Pip Cards. And if we look at, I wish I had a straight up Marseille. I'm sorry, I don't have like a more historical kind of deck to show you. But this marshmallow is quite good in that respect. There's this sense of balance and evenness, and everything being in a certain position for a certain reason. And so when I'm working with Pip Cards, one of the things I do is exactly that. I try to find the sacred center of the shape, of the whole shape. What is the energy? What is the intention of the space? And I think this, like the title of these Thursday night things is reading intuitively. And I think this is one of the greatest and coolest things to do with reading intuitively. So here's the 2 of Pentacles from the Lily White. I've never done this, and I might just do this tonight. So imagine you had this, so you got a little bit of sticky something on the back of the card, and you stuck this on the wall or somewhere where you could stare at it. So when you do this practice, it's really important that it's flat. You don't want to have it at an angle, right? So you don't want to put it in a card holder or something. So you want to get some of that blue sticky stuff and put it on your wall and have it right at eye level. And here I would stare right at that point between, like at the plant there, at that junction. And I have a funny feeling that it would start to go like this, would start to move. And I think that is one of the secrets of reading the Pip Cards. And to allow that energy to come forth from the card. This has nothing to do with numerology, nothing to do with the elements, that's got nothing to do with the relationship with the card, with the minors. This is just this really cool underlying layer that nobody ever seems to talk about. And I think when we get a deck creator like Lauren Aletta, and I would love to meet Kim Kranz. I think she is one of the most understated deck creators. let me explain what I mean. So I did a more extended review of the animal oracle, the Wild Unknown Animal Oracle. And when I was doing that study, I started to realize at the many, many profound layers that are in that deck and working with that deck and how powerful it is. And I think if there's a pip deck of animal decks, that's a pip deck of animal decks, right? Because there's no keywords on it, right? There's no keywords. So what you have to learn to pick up on is shapes, colors, all the underlying cues. You guys are so quiet. Either you're totally bored or mesmerized or something. So here's an example. This is from the Wild Unknown. So let's kind of go to the energy of the card. So there isn't any sacred geometry here per se. But what if you did the Tritak exercise with this card? And again, we've got a pentacle at the center. So you go to the very center of the pentacle. And you did the Tritak exercise with something like this. And you have all this cool swirling energy on the outside. Well, the practice is to keep your focus right at the bindu. So you want to keep your focus right at the bindu. And of course, somebody's taking notes. I don't have my glasses on. I'm glad you guys are still there. I can see you making a few comments now, and I will put my glasses on and look in a second, but thank you. I appreciate it. So when you do this, you stare right at the very center. And of course, your peripheral vision will be looking, out towards the yellow or the green. But the idea is to not let the eyes wander and to stay right at the center focus. And so this deck, there's something pretty magical in her pips. Not all of them, right? Because some of them we have, more kind of animal stuff going on, and there's all kinds of things. But I really encourage you in certain decks, like, my God, what if you practice Tritak on this sun card? Anything could happen. Anything could happen. It's just, it's really quite something. So yeah, so like I said, I didn't, but anyway, I think, this 4, sorry, I just passed by it. Here's one. Now this one doesn't have a bindu in the center. So doesn't have a point in the center, but you could very lightly with a pencil draw it in the center of the color. And then just kind of stare at it and see what emerges. What is the effect of that rainbow color that's emerging through the wands, right? Because these are really magical cards. And here's another one, right? Did you ever think of this one as like the Eye of Shiva? Like, this is a pretty powerful card. And I think Kim has a lot of stuff under the surface in her cards, in her decks, and it is amazing. So yeah, so I'm just gonna check out what's going on here. So Tarot Tales is here. Hello, hello. Nice to see you. Okay. Yes, the animal spirit cards have elements on them. Gold is Asima. Hello. Welcome. So yeah, so I think this is a part of reading pip cards that we forget about. And so this is an energy unto the sacred shapes within the cards. Okay, so I think that is, I'm going to say that is maybe the most important thing. The most important thing. But then I have 4 other things that are kind of important. So, and we need to kind of blend all of these together. And in certain readings, some things are going to be kind of stand out more than others, and certain cards, because not all cards the sacred geometry is going to speak to you, or it's going to rise to the surface. But when it does, I really encourage you to let it. So what I kind of gleaned over, I didn't really say about it, was that in the mandalas that are associated with the sacred Sanskrit mantras, the sounds. So, for example, the Shri Yantra, SHRI. If you Google Shri Yantra and you go and get an image of Shri Yantra, and you do Tratak on the Shri Yantra, which is a quite familiar mandala that you have seen, I'm sure, there is this level of purification, this level of cleansing and healing that happens only through staring at the Shri Yantra, because it has an energy unto itself. And it's just a really, really beautiful part of the yoga practice. So let's go on, okay? So the second thing, of course, is numerology. And I am kind of like, I don't know what to do with numerology. There are so many, many schools of numerology, and there are so many associations with numbers. And so because I read intuitively, certain experiences, certain things I've read, I think it's just really important that you allow all of the different teachings and things that you have acquired just to kind of, settle and integrate, to find your own association with certain numbers. Because why? Because there's so many. And I think when it boils down to it, there is an essence of certain numbers. Like the ones are pretty easy. The 10s are pretty easy. And we have, in tarot, we have slightly different associations than certain schools of numerology. So I don't think there's a wrong way to read numerologically. And by the way, that adverb, if you type it in anywhere, somehow it gets underlined in squiggly lines. I don't know why numerologically is not in the Google menu. But yeah. So when we're looking at the ones, we're looking at the pure potential. I'm going to go to Tarot des Zohar, the pure potential of the suit. And what does that mean exactly? What is the pure potential of the suit? And this is just an amazing aspect of, sacred learning to begin to understand what is the number one. And it's a huge aspect of working with numbers and working with any kind of sacred teachings. And I think this is the Ace of Pentacles and the Tarot des Zohar. And by the way, if anybody knows, so Lori LePage was selling this through printerstudio.com. It's not there anymore. And I did email her. I tried to find a couple of different emails, and she's not gotten back to me. So if anybody knows where, or if Tarot des Zohar is still available anywhere, let me know. Because I would definitely, it's one of these decks I would love to have another copy. The pure potential of the suit. So what that means is that the energy of every single number that follows is contained within that number. So you can't take anything away. You can't add anything to it. It is complete. It is utterly complete. It's perfect already. So it is the most perfect card. Perfect in the sense of completeness and wholeness. And so there is anything that can happen. There's a couple of decks that use the symbology of the acorn. I think this is one of them. The acorn is in the world card, I believe. And I know there's a few other decks that use the acorn. as that symbol of the seed. And you'll see that in quite a few decks where you have the seed in the ace and then the full-grown version, especially in the suit of pentacles, the full-grown version of the seed in the 10. And so we, just no point, I'm not going to go through that, but we just need to really understand that from the ace, anything can happen. Anything is possible. And when we're reading with tarot cards, how do we know what that ace is referring to? So the potential, when you have an ace, really look at the cards around it, because the potential of the ace isn't the ace itself. The potential is what is around it, the embodiment around it, what is touching it. Single card readings with pip cards are almost impossible, unless of course you're saying what date is it. So pip cards are great for doing dates and numbers and timings and things like that when you're trying to figure out months or stuff like that. But other than that, I would not use decks with pip minors for larger tarot spreads. Yes, it's on Google, but if you actually go to Printer Studio, it says the creator is no longer, the deck is no longer available. And I did that just not too long ago, so I'd be surprised if it's there, but somebody can do that if you want. And so, you know, this deck, do we have a hand there? We do. So like I said, this is not a straight up. It's not, she says this is not a Marseille deck, but it's very, very close to a Marseille deck. But we do have a hand, right, in this one. Can you see the hand? But just really think of the aces as that seed. And so there is no room for doubt. There's no room for fear. There's no room for anything but knowing you can do anything. So yeah, so then what is the relationship when we move from the 1 to the 2? And a lot of teachers and teachings expand, like there's so many layers here, okay? We can talk about the tree of life. We can talk about the chakras. There's so many systems. And if over time you begin to create these transparencies, or you have, you know, tracing paper. I don't know if anybody uses tracing paper anymore. So imagine you had a sheet of tracing paper and you drew the chakras on the tracing paper. And then you had another piece of tracing paper where you had the tree of life. And maybe there's some other systems there are. I'm just trying to think what they are right now. And you layered all of these systems that had numbers on them on top of each other. They all kind of have these points in common about the numbers. And when we look at the tree of life, at the Sephra Keter, you know, this is, you know, this is the crown. This is the crown chakra. This is the opening where we're closest to God, where we're closest to the universe. And so that one card is super, super important. So when we move to the 2, all of a sudden we're not 1 anymore. And then we move into this kind of experience of duality. And so I was sharing a reading with a fellow tarot reader who was also an astrologer the other day, and there were 3 2s in the reading. It was from Tarot of the Hidden Realm, and it was a kind of a love reading, and I was quite surprised. He did not know the deck. He did look at the pictures. He did look at the images, and I'm going to share something else with you that was really cool, and I would love some feedback on this. It's about facings. I'm going to come back to that. Somebody just type facings if I don't circle back there. But I was surprised at how one pointed his interpretation was of the reading. And the only place he went was choices. Twos are about choices. So that's a layer, but that's only one layer of the twos. And when we start to work with the more pippish style cards, and even with scenic cards, I think the more different paradigms that we have, the richer our voice becomes for doing a reading. So twos, if we go to the chakra system, are about the second chakra. And in this chakra, we do explore relationships. And often the twos are about relationship and about the balance, right? The balance of right relationship. And so hence the sense of balance. And it's hard when we take a whole and we split it into pieces. There's always these issues in the twos of, you know, which part needs to kind of strengthen up and which part needs to become smaller. So these two parts can kind of work together. But what happens is these two parts forget that they're not separate, that they are part of a whole. And as we divide more and more and more and more into the larger numbers, that understanding gets diminished and it gets forgotten. And so if we stare at a card that has many, many pieces, I think one of the things we need to do is remember that these are all parts of what was a whole. They're not 10 things. They are tenths, right? They're not tens, they're tenths. And for me, that is, it's kind of like, whoa, right? It's like this whole other piece, this other level. So, and of course, sometimes I look at it as 10, like 10 things. But if you look at it as tenths, it just puts a completely different understanding on it. So I want to go back to the numerology, because, and just, I want to say, because I'm looking right here, I have two books on my desk. One is Tom Benjamin's book. Do you know this one, Tarot on Earth? And this is basically an exercise. If you are looking for a book to do some tarot study, it's called A Practical Approach to the Cards. And so he does have this chart, and he talks about, and thank you for this very much, Tom. His exercise encourages you to go to as many different websites, books, resources as you can go to write down the numbers, so 1 to 10, and to write down as many different keywords and associations that you can find. Thank you. I will come back to facing for each of the numbers. And then he calls it distillation, but what he means is to like find the common one, find the common denominator, put all those keywords into a pot, shake them up, and then find the few that kind of resonate with you. And then from that, find the shadow and the light. Because we need to remember that part of this whole is this shadow and the light, and every single number, every single card has a shadow aspect and a light aspect. Okay, so I'm going to pause on the numerology, and I want to go back to this facings teaching. And do I have any cards here that have facings? Probably. So I want to ask you a question. So let's look at this moon card. Sorry, I completely straying off topic, but I will get back to topic. So she is looking to the right, and definitely her shoulders are to the right. She's looking ahead, but her body is to the right. Right? And in a reading, right? So in a reading, she's looking this way. So my question to you is she looking to the future or is she looking to the past? And I'm actually going to pause because I want to see if you say, if you tell me if she's looking to the future or the past. I really want to know. Come on, everybody chime in. Future or past? I'm just going to get another example here. Tarot Tale says future. 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 So here's the Fool in the Lumina. I tend to look over my left shoulder when I look behind myself. Okay. So why is the right to the future? Why? Why is the right to the future? Look at this, more sacred geometry in this deck. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you what I was reminded of because I have heard this before and I kind of know this teaching. So when you look at this card from her perspective, so you are behind the card, which way is she looking? Imagine you are her. And that's what this other reader does, right? So she's looking to the past. This is his interpretation. Because he looks at every single one of the figures in the cards from their perspective, not the reader's perspective. So here the Fool is moving to the future. Right? Look at it from the Fool's perspective. I forgot about this. So when I used to do mediumship, just got to put this back in the right pile. I used to do quite a bit more mediumship. And in mediumship, now I'm confused because I don't do a lot of mediumship right now. And so when I felt energy on one side as opposed to the other side, it was, now I'm totally confused. I'm just going to leave it at that. But I just wanted to share with you this invitation to kind of play with this idea of facings and looking at the viewpoint from the character in the card as opposed to your reverse viewpoint from looking down at the cards. So yeah, it's okay. Ange is here. See the card from within. Yeah, so that is, but also past, present, future is a man-made construct, right? It's something that we have created. And if you are more of a sci-fi kind of person, if you're more kind of spiritual, you do a lot of meditation, you know that time it's a spiral. It's all interwoven, the past, present, and the future. It's not right, left, forward, straight, back, and to the side. So this is just an exercise, right? It's just something that you set up to make sense of your readings, and you need to have a have a way about the way that you read, and I think you need to kind of stick with that unless something happens to shift you in another way, right? Facings are really, really interesting. More to the effect of if people are have their backs to each other, or they're paying attention, or they're marching out of the reading, or they're coming into the reading. They're actually focused on the topic and they want to listen to the reading. I think that is way more important than past, present, and future. So that is my little kind of interjection on facings. So going back to numerology. So if you are familiar with the chakras, if you're familiar with the tree of life, if you are familiar with the energy of the sides of the tree of life, if you are familiar with the energy of, the sides of the physical body, from a yogic perspective, all of this can kind of be brought in, because in the tree of life, we have certain numbers on certain sides. And that in itself is another layer, and it's really cool. And you can bring that in to any of the readings that you want. So please feel free to ask questions, because this is just such a cool topic. So in the threes, so when we have the triangle, we no longer have separation. We have something that's coming together. There's a union. There's a sense of union. And I'm not going to go through all of the numbers, but I'll just do the three. And so we come from this pure potential to this separation, and we come back again to union with the triangle. And a lot of deck creators have, sometimes there's a baby, like there's a couple with a baby in the threes, like in the Three of Pentacles or the Three of Wands sometimes, but there's a sense of something being born. And even if you look at the three in the Rider-Waite, there is that energy of coming together. And this is also known as the first completion, right? So we have the whole, we have the separation, and then we come together. So this is the first completion. And so there's a sense of something coming together in all of the threes. And for me, that's a really important keyword. But when I look at, like I got these couple of books that I've got here, just like, so in one book here, it says the number 3 is full expression of the element. I don't agree with that. I think the full expression of the element is the 1. And this is just, I'm sharing with you my perspective, right? And I'm not saying that I'm right. This is saying how I work with the numbers. Another book I'm looking at here says growth and triangulation. So I want you to allow yourself room for these kinds of interpretations. And then when we have the 4, right, we have this sense of expansion. And think of the energy of we're going to come to the association with the majors later, but this is a really good example to look at the emperor. Think of what emperors do, right? Emperors expand, they conquer. They go out, right? And they expand their land. And there's this tremendous sense of exactly that, expansion and energy. And so that is an aspect of the 4, as well as this really solid shape that is being created, right? This solid base, this foundation, this square shape. So these are 2 really important things. And so to allow the kind of essence, so the first one is the sacred geometry. So to allow the energy of the sacred geometry to come forth. The second one is to explore numerology and to do a little bit of self-study with numerology. And I would make this a project you could do it over 10 months, and you could just spend a whole month on the number 1, right? And a whole month on the number 2. I think this is something that is worthwhile taking your time, or even having an ongoing sheet in your tarot journal for the number 1s through number 10, or 1 through 9, and just really dedicating part of your tarot study this year or another time to expanding your understanding of the numbers. Oh, and I thought of one more thing tonight as I was getting ready. So I speak Japanese. I'm sure I've told you that before. And I lived there for a while. And so the number 4 in Japan means death. And it has a really negative connotation. And then this other thing came in. Ooh, isn't that cool? Unlucky number 13 is 1 plus 3 equals 4. And so maybe 13 at some unconscious level, energetic number is connected to the Japanese language shi, which refers to death. And that's just kind of blew me away, because I'd never thought about that before. So when you start exploring these things, crazy stuff can kind of connect together. And I don't believe that anything is just random, right? These things are not random. So in Japan, you generally speaking, I don't know if things are shifting in this more modern era, but you're not going to get a set of 4 teacups. There's always going to be 5 teacups in the pack. You're never going to get a 4-pack of anything. It'll always be maybe 2 or 5. So yeah, kind of cool. All right, so the third thing, which that was a good segue with the Emperor I touched on, is the association of the pips to the majors, right? So if you are having trouble with a card, so I'm just looking at this 9 of Swords here. And this one, of course, has blood on it and different things. But sometimes in a reading, especially when you're dealing with pip cards, and you have, here's your ace, this one also has a hand. It's really interesting to tie in the association with the major card. So if you start staring at, my eyes are just completely looking up, looking down in the half light. Wow, this is an amazing card. So I'm looking at this 9 of Pentacles here. And maybe there's something about this shape that speaks to you. And I don't want you to look at the Patrick Valenza little touches on it. We're just talking about reading it as a pip card. So we're either looking to the sacred shapes, the esoteric underlying shape, or we're looking to the numerology, or we're kind of going, what in the world does this card have to do with the Hermit? And if the Hermit is in the reading, there's something about that needs to come forth. And so when you have a whole bunch of one of the coins or the wands or the swords in the card, sometimes it will be divided into pieces. And it'll be almost as if it's broken up into pieces. And something like in this one, you might see for some reason 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1. Or you might see the 4 on the top relating to something, or the 4 on the bottom relating to something. And so remember that when we're looking at larger numbers, the larger numbers, if they're not a prime number, are made up of multiple numbers. And so to be curious about that, and to yeah, so the 9 is 3 plus 3 plus 3. 3. plus 3 plus 3. It's 3 triangles. It's 3 completions. And it is a super sacred number if you think of all of the trinities in the different spiritualities, right? There's always a trinity, right? Maiden, Mother, Crone, and Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, right? There's always 3s, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. And so when we have the 9, we have 3, 3, 3, like it's just full of this beautiful divine spark of energy. And when I see 9s, and when I think of the Hermit card, I really tap into something kind of deep and really special here. And so when we have this opportunity to not have a scenic background, I think there's something really special that can be gleaned from the cards. And so it's really challenging to be a reader and to go from a non-scenic cards to scenic cards, like back and forth, unless of course you're really, really experienced. But it's almost more fun to read cards without a scene, because there's all these different layers. So, oh, we have somebody new. Hello, Andrina. That's beautiful. Andreina. One of my Japanese students refused to live in a room with the number 4 dorm. Yeah, because it signifies death, and nobody wants to live in the room of death. And I remember, oh gosh, what year was this? I was living in Vancouver, BC at the time. There was a lot of immigration from Hong Kong. This is when, this is just around the time when Hong Kong was becoming a part of China again. And there was a lot of immigration from Hong Kong to Vancouver. And the neighborhood that I was teaching in, we had a lot of new students. I was teaching ESL. Everybody was teaching ESL in every class. And it was, I remember the real estate thing, because people wanted the number 8 in their address, or the number 8, or things had to add up to 8. And I think there's a lot of cultures that are way more sensitive to the numerology, the energy of the numerology, than others. And so there's something to that. So it's definitely worthwhile your time to put that energy into that. So going back, I was talking about the major arcana. So easy to get distracted. Okay, so I want to kind of go to more challenging cards. So I want to think about the 5. But we should go to a Pip card. I was just looking at this one with the earthworm being cut. You know, when I see this card, you know what? Did you ever play in the dirt when you were a kid and actually like cut the worms and watch them regrow? I mean, it's so gross. It's so mean. It's so non-yogic. But I'm sure as a child, maybe some of you did that. I wasn't the only sick kid. But when I see this card, that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me that even in this 5 of Swords energy, you can heal through this experience, right? You just need to be in this experience and you can be healed. But that's got nothing to do with the topic for tonight. So I better put that one down because not enough pips in that one. Let's go back to the marshmallow. Okay. So I wanted to pick a 5 in the marshmallow, because in the Marseille-Style decks, you basically have the same court cards. I can't find a 5. Just bear with me. I will find a 5. Like, look at that 4. And the sense of the square and the stability. Like, for me, that's quite easy to pick up on. So I'm looking for a 5. A 5 of Wands, a 5 of Cups, a 5 of something. And here's one, 5 of Cups. So think of other symbols that have 5 sides or 5 points. If you think of the pentacle, right, the sacred energy of the pentacle, think about the whole aspect of 5 elements, right? We have earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And how those 5 all work together to create a whole. And there's no negative energy to that 5. That's just a beautiful, magical kind of 5. And so the connotation of the 5 being strife is not universal to the number 5. There's almost a sense, like when I look at this 5, I almost see a sense of power. When you come from the structure of the 4 and when you move towards the 5, there's almost a sense of freedom in the 5. And that might be my personal stuff because I don't like the structure of the 4. But I'm just going to go to these books here just to have to see. So in Tom's book, he says disruption. So the shadow side is shaking up patterns, and the light side is shaking up patterns, and the shadow is disruptions and conflict. And this other book here says loss and conflict. So to me, those are coming from scenic pips. The whole idea of conflict in the 5 is coming from the energy of a more scenic pip. It's not necessarily coming from the number 5. And so when you're working with the more challenging numbers, the 5s and the 7s, take your time to explore different kinds of teachings and different kinds of energy. Now, the 5 on the tree of life, this is the tree of life, by the way, right? So this is the Sevra of severity, which ties in really, really well with the whole idea of the conflict of the 5. And so that's one of the reasons why the Tree of Life and the RWS deck fit so very well together. This is I've referenced this book before. This is a really lovely book to read through when you're studying the minors. So that works really well. But I think there's this whole other area of the 5s that is worth exploration. So the 5 is in connection with the Hierophant, sometimes called the shaman, the teacher. And so how are the 5s connected to the teacher? I think it's quite obvious, but I think sometimes we forget, right? That the major lessons come at that halfway point. So the 5 is about the halfway point. If you're going from 1 to 9 or 1 to 10, where things kind of get, I don't know how to say this. Like there's been a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of energy, and it's almost like there's too much. There's too many choices, too many decisions, too much talking, too much fire, too much emotion. That's just, you don't know what to do with it, right? There's this process that has to happen before you can go on to the higher numbers. And so there's a sense of something needs to be resolved in the 5. And so how do we resolve the conflict of the 5? I'm just going to read Kyle's comment if it's, so if in order for a deck to be balanced, that we need the light and the shadow conflict should be represented, which number would it be better represented by? I have really gone away from that. I think that every single card has a shadow and light. And the light side of those 5s is that there is a really, really big teaching there. And when I see the Hierophant card, I think too, so the heart, if you go more traditionally, it's quite a structured kind of teaching, right? It's coming through but it's not. It is and it isn't. You know how we say like the Hierophant is the structured kind of teaching, and we go like the High Priestess is more like the intuitive kind of stuff. But really think about it, like these scriptures, these books that have been passed down, through the traditional, more organized type religions. These are spiritual, sacred teachings. They aren't really they don't really fall out of the into the book knowledge kind of category, except when things are taken too literally. So my point here is that in the fives, there's this tremendous potential for spiritual learning. And if we get lost in the conflict of the fives, and we are in the middle of all of those wands battling one another, all of those swords battling one another, right? Or even as we look to the Five of Wands or the Five of Swords in a more Marseille-style deck, we begin to see a lot of sticks, or a lot of the swords are curved on the card, and it starts to begin to get crowded. And so there's this sense of, okay, what are we going to do when all of these things start to accumulate on the card? With the 8, 9, and 10 of wands and swords in a Marseille-style deck, to me, it just looks like it's like too much. It's so much stuff. I want to break it down. I want to separate it. I want to take it into pieces and chunks. And so when I'm doing a reading, I try to help find what are those pieces and what are those chunks. So yeah, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to check the time, because we are past an hour already. So when I'm reading Pip cards, the first thing is, if there's an opportunity to allow the sacred geometry to arise, I allow that to arise. The second thing is to study the numerology and to allow whatever study of numerology is already filtered in, what is already integrated, to become a part of the reading. The third thing is the association of that particular number with the major arcana. The fourth thing is to recognize, and so Kyle asked this question, is that every single number has a light and a shadow side. And I don't think in a deck that, so Kyle's question is really important, because, so I'm going to say two things here. One is that every single card has a light side and a shadow side, but it's not necessarily portrayed in a scenic minor as both. And so when I'm choosing a deck and I go through the deck, one of the exercises I like to do is go, okay, shadow, light, 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 shadow, shadow, light, and I divide the cards and see if the deck is reflecting, the 56 cards, if the deck is reflecting equally light and shadow, because I think that's really important to kind of have that. I know some people don't like it when the 9 of Cups looks kind of indifferent or sad. Some people don't like it when the 10 of Cups is I'm thinking, okay, think of the dreaming, I think it's the Dreaming Way Tarot, and the family, like parents, are totally overwhelmed with everything. So it's really kind of cool when an author intentionally balances out, when a deck creator balances out the artwork, so we see an equal amount of light and shadow in the deck. It's a really good exercise to do if it's not something that you do. But when we look at, we're looking at Pip cards, all of the cards basically look the same. So when we're talking about light and shadow, then the question is, what is the light that is being reflected in the numerology? What is the light that's being reflected in the associated major arcana card? And what is the shadow of that arcana card? And what is the shadow of that number? So if we look at the number 4, so suppose we have the 4 of Cups, and we're just looking at 4 cups sitting on the card, then we're thinking, okay, that looks safe, right? It looks like an enclosure. It looks like a safe space, safe place to be. We feel protected. But you heard what I said a few minutes ago. I feel suffocated. I don't like structure. I don't like to be enclosed, right? It feels, so when I go to the ashram in India, and this is really interesting. This is really interesting. So in an ashram, you have concrete walls protecting around all of the sacred space for a multitude of reasons. One is for protection, right? And one is so that you can carry on your sacred practices within the walls and not be disturbed. But there's also this aspect of the outside world not understanding what's going on the inside. And so those walls are there for multiple layers of protection and learning and all of that. If you look at, well, let's talk about the number 8. I'm not going to be able to get through all the numbers today, but there's a lot of conflicting, sorry. There's a lot of conflicting energy around the number 8. So it is connected, of course, to the infinity symbol and the lemniscate. And for me, when I see the lemniscate, I think of something that is constantly moving, constantly in flow. And maybe at some level, that's where the whole idea of the 8s being energy and movement and things going quite quickly comes from. But of course, that doesn't apply to a lot of the scenic cards. But when I see any of the 8s, I want to look and I want to think about the energy and the flow, and I want to kind of bring that in to the 8s. When I look at Tom's book, his key words are work, commitment, and dedication. And I remember when I read this for the first time, I'm going like, what? Work, commitment, and dedication. And then that takes me to the 8 of Pentacles in a scenic deck, but not too many other places. I have a couple here. Yeah, that one says movement. And then on the tree of life, so here, okay, we have the Sephra of Hod, right, which is glory. And I see that sense of glory and light in the 8s. And so really important that, you know what I said earlier, it's hard to go back and forth between scenic and non-scenic. And I think it's worthwhile, if you're just learning and exploring this, to stay in the non-scenic for a significant period of time to build up your comfort zone, because you're not going to build up your layer of comfort working with non-scenic pips if you don't stick with it and stay with it and start to build in all these different layers. Okay. And then the last one. Okay, so my number 5, and I should wind up soon today because we're at 1 hour 15 minutes, is the energy of the suit. And so I have spent a lot of time talking about the energy of the swords and the energy of the wands so far. So I did a live on both of those. And I will do a live when we just talk about the energy of the earth and we talk about the energy of the water. So we'll do that as well too. So that component is really important to understanding the energy of a reading for sure, because, and it does help if you have, you know what, I've always wondered, this is another question, why the 2s are like a half lemniscate in the Marseille. And there's something to that I haven't really uncovered. Because I really like the 2 of Pentacles in in these decks. It's one of my favorite cards in all of these decks. And it is the card that is often personalized by the creators, which is really interesting. So why do the creators put their special energy into that? Sorry, I just wanted to talk about this last thing in relation to the suit. And I feel like I haven't really shared with you. Okay. So let's look at this Five of Wands. So we're talking fire, and we're talking everything that fire represents. And so this is something that reading scenic pips and non-scenic pips has in common, and that it is, for me as the reader, it is essential that at some point you stop talking and you really kind of look at the balance of the energy and which energy is present, which energy is dominant, and which energy is missing, because the energy that is missing is definitely going to play into that reading. And so here we have the energy of fire. We have the number 5. Somebody is a Scorpion. And we have the Hierophant. And if we look at the way that the wands are intersecting here, there is a sacred center. There is a sacred point. There is a point at the center of this shape. And so I think in the the swords especially, you have that opportunity in Marseille-Style decks to kind of do that, is to go into the very center of the card and kind of feel its energy. So I'm kind of circling back. And I don't know if any of this has been helpful for you today or not, but Two of Swords. So what I want to encourage you to do is to take your time and to not get frustrated with reading non-scenic pips, because there is so much there if you take your time to kind of explore those 5 things that we've talked about tonight. So I want to thank you for being here. And if you have more questions, or you want to kind of dive into this at another level or another layer, maybe ask some very specific questions. And I would like to take requests for upcoming lives. And for sure, there will be one on the suit of water and one on the suit of earth. But after that, I kind of want to leave it up to you, and I will create polls as you let me know what you want to talk about on Thursday nights. So yeah, astrologically too. We didn't talk about astrology, but yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, Lori. No, I get Kyle. Lori is Whale Song. Kyle is Kyle. So yeah, you're most welcome. Yeah, so that's a wrap. That's a wrap. My next video that's going to come up, I've got a few that I'm working on, and the next one I think I'm going to share is the Slow Tarot. So I've been working with it for a while, and I was watching some people's Slow Tarot videos the last few days, and I feel like there's a lot of things that haven't been touched on. So I think I'm going to do that, because it's been an amazing deck to work with, and I would love to share that with you. So I want to wish you well. Enjoy the rest of your evening if you're still up, or if it's the top of your day, enjoy the rest of your day, and stay well. Namaste.